Well, it appears something changed. We didn't get our countdown clock as usual. The behind the scenes have changed a little bit the last couple of weeks, and it used to be when I hit the go live button, we would get our countdown, and it would go. Prior to that, we had to hit that countdown our own, and then we hit the go live button. But here we are, Trevor. We didn't get our spiffy countdown or any of that good stuff. It just I got the thing that popped up on the screen that said you are live. So we're live. How you doing today?
Doing well, man. I was waiting to hear the song.
I know.
Yeah, I was waiting to hear the song. So but we're doing good, man. It was a busy weekend. Went to New York and I got there Friday afternoon last week, and we didn't get back to Indianapolis until about 1 a.m. on Sunday. So yeah, we've been busy, but it's been good, man. It was a fun trip out there. Saw a lot of cool stuff, ate a lot of good food. The game was awesome to go to, so it was a lot of fun.
Where'd you stay? Were you like downtown, midtown, uptown? Where were you?
My sister lives in East Village, so
okay.
Yeah, so my wife and I stayed with her.
Nice. Okay. I didn't realize you had a local connection out there.
Yeah, it was
makes
nice.
It easier too.
Yeah, we got the local experience. So
did you subway to the game, or how did you do? Did you? That's what I did. I can't remember the name of the hotel or exact, but when Notre Dame played in the Pinstripe Bowl against Rutgers, I guess what was that, 2013? Whatever hotel, it was like the media hotel, that kind of thing. But it was like a 5-block walk, I think, like to the subway, and then just like boom, right to the subway, and out to Yankee Stadium. It was kind of cool. That was my first subway experience, and I lived to tell the tale. So actually, it was my second. I forgot. I did there was another time when I was still doing Notre Dame baseball. We were staying out by LaGuardia. But one of the team managers and I, the Yankees and Red Sox, were playing at Old Yankee Stadium, and we did. It was kind of we had to split it up because of, I think we took like a taxi to the subway, or we might have even taken a bus to the subway and then got on the subway, like in Harlem or something like that. And then it was like Harlem to the Bronx, and, got out and that whole thing, and then did it in reverse coming back. And we ticked off a taxi driver because our hotel was right across, like whatever freeway that is from LaGuardia. So like you can literally see it, but you can't walk there. And this is pre-Uber and all that kind of stuff. So, the taxis all line up at the airport and they get ticked off, and it's like, they've been in line for probably an hour, and then they get ticked off because they're getting, like a $10 fare or something like that. Yeah. So, hey, it's like, you do what you got to do, right?
Sure.
All right. Well, we've got a lot coming up on today's show. Of course, Notre Dame hosting USC. We've got a lot of comments from Marcus Freeman that we'll get to. We've even got some Al Golden from yesterday's media session that will pop up in rapid fire as well. So a lot of stuff coming with Notre Dame at USC, chance to get into the college football playoffs, and a chance to host college football playoff game and the whole thing. Do want to tell you about our friends at MyBookie, because Thanksgiving is not just about stuff in your face. It's about stuff in your wallet. And MyBookie's got a bunch of killer promos to help you do just that. So this Thanksgiving Day, MyBookie is boosting the odds on Devin Achane to score the first touchdown in the Dolphins-Packers game. If he scores first, you cash in big. If he doesn't, MyBookie's got your back with a full refund. That's what we call a no-lose bet. And then starting as of right now, MyBookie's Telegram prize pool contest kicks off. The pool starts at $15,000 and it grows by $5,000 for every new 1,000 subscribers. All you have to do is join the Telegram channel by December 1st. That's this coming up Sunday, to lock in your share. If you're already subscribed, you're automatically in. The more subscribers, the bigger the winnings get. It's pretty simple. So spread the word and you make the jackpot even that much more massive. So here's the game plan. This Thanksgiving, load up your plate, grab your phone, lock in your picks. MyBookie's giving you risk-free football action, a shot at a growing prize pool. And if you're new to the family, they'll double your deposit if you use our promo code IRISH. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. So you may have heard this, Trevor. Notre Dame controls its own destiny, of course, going into this week's game against USC. And, of course, there's, I think, as things go on and, the more you kind of, pass each test week by week, the noise does tend to get there. We've got college football playoff rankings, of course, coming out again tonight. But Marcus Freeman talked this week about controlling their own destiny and tuning that noise out.
They know that. We know that. I know that. That's reality. But all I continue is to remind myself and them, like, it's human nature. Every person in this room, every person watching this, we all tend to drift into the future. We all tend to daydream about a future that is uncertain. So I always challenge them. It's the thought after the thought. You start thinking about things other than right now, remind yourself to get back into the moment and take care of what you have guaranteed right in front of you, and that's right now. And so is the noise louder if you let it be? If you let it be, right? We control the volume of the noise, right? In terms of what we read, what we listen to, who we talk to, we control that. We control what things go into our head. And so it's a choice we all have to make, is to turn down the noise. The noise is loud, sure. I mean, shoot, I'm sure I can get on social media and it'll be a lot louder. But I control the volume of the noise that goes into my head.
I mean, it's true. I guess you do control it to a certain extent. Does seem easier said than done. I mean, essentially, if you truly want to control it and tune it out, like he said, it's like, are 18 to 22-year-olds, going to completely put away their phone and not turn on the TV every night, or, dial up the internet or talk to their friends? There's a lot that goes into controlling that, right?
I think that's the hardest thing, man. I mean, it's at the end of the day, we're talking about 18 to 22 to 23-year-olds. I guess the occasional 24-year-olds.
Jack Kaiser's cost 35 years old, whatever it happens to be.
I was about to say Jack Heiser and I are almost the same age. He's doing his thing, I'm doing mine. But no, I mean,
they know that.
I think.
Hang on, sorry.
No, you're all right. I think there's some truth to that, but unfortunately, a lot of those questions that us fans are going to have and people that analyze this team are only going to be answered on Saturday. Luckily, I think Notre Dame got to experience early what it was like when you kind of let some of that outside noise creep in, right? They got their lesson learned after. In 1 week they go from beating Texas A&M, an SEC team, down at Kyle Field, and then the following week they lose to Northern Illinois. That was kind of their lesson in letting the noise creep in and not handling success well. And what we've seen so far this college football season is other teams are falling into that trap as well. Alabama beats Georgia, and then the following week they lose to Vanderbilt. Colorado went on a run when a lot of people counted them out, and they just lost to Kansas. Yep. You know what I mean? So, like, there's upsets like that every single week, and so I'm hoping that that's going to be the case, but it's much easier said than done because, Notre Dame is kind of back in the limelight of the college football world, and we're going to see how they handle it with a big rivalry week coming up.
Texas A&M beat LSU, and then they turned around and lost to South Carolina. I mean, it's literally been a season of that kind of stuff. Like, everyone wants to keep holding Northern Illinois against Notre Dame, and I get it. Especially from, a bigger picture perspective, that is still the worst of the teams that anyone has lost to. But, like, if you look at the different resumes of these, like Alabama has what you would call 2 bad losses on its resume. There are plenty of other teams out there with bad losses on their resume, and like that notwithstanding right now, like Mike was just saying that the rankings don't really matter to Notre Dame because they can't be higher than a 5 seed. Well, that's true. But, the bottom line right now is everything is on this game. It's down to this. You've taken care of things since that week 2 loss to Northern Illinois. Like, they let it, they fell into the classic trap that so many of these other teams have fallen into since then. And they've managed to put that behind them and even use it as motivation to get here. But the bottom line is everything rides on what happens this Saturday now. Like, that's just what it comes down to. So, like, even tuning out the noise and everything else, everyone knows the implication now because it's down to 1 game. And and I think someone brought this up at the press conference, though, like every week since NIU has essentially been an elimination game for Notre Dame. So, I mean, they've dealt with a good deal of pressure all the way through, right? Like, is there any more pressure on this one just because it's the end of the season? Or do you think maybe that, like, what they've gone through over this stretch of, 9 consecutive games now at this point, like, it's essentially, prepared them for this, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say, and have that mentality of one game at a time when you have X amount of games in front of you. But, I think there is a little truth to, all right, take it one game at a time, but that this is it. Marcus Freeman talks at the beginning of every single year about having 12 guaranteed opportunities. And this is the last one of those, as weird as that sounds. So I think it's fitting that it's USC finishing it in the Coliseum, out on the West Coast. I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I think that it's tough to – it's hard for me to put myself in the mind of, a coach on that coaching staff or a player on that team right now.
Sure.
Because you have to have that one game, one life mentality, and I understand that completely. But it is different, in my opinion, going into this week saying, all right, well, we'll just take it one game at a time, and the object is to go 1-0 this week. And it's like, well, yes, but this is it. Right? Like, this is your last chance to make an impression on the committee. It's your last chance to add a decent win over a rival on your playoff resume. It's also your last opportunity to potentially lose and get yourself kicked out. So it's going to be a fun weekend.
By the way, Salty cranking up the pressure on us today. We're the only IB show today, so we've got to kick it, I guess. And
okay.
He, he's glad that you're aboard. It looks like. I think that's what he's saying there. I think he's saying he'd rather have you than Vince, is what he is saying.
Well, I don't know about all that, Salty. I don't know, but I will say Jaden Greathouse is awesome. You're welcome for that.
I saw Jaden Greathouse, by the way, again yesterday when I was walking into the into the press conference 3 weeks in a row as I'm rounding. What would that be? The north side of Notre Dame Stadium. There's Jaden Greathouse, bebopping, scatting along, coming around the outside, coming the other way.
Nice.
So he looks good. I mean, he looks healthy. We saw him last week. He was healthy, no issues, anything like that. So
good to hear.
Yep, absolutely. So this year is similar to 2012 and 2018 when the Irish went out to USC to finish off a regular season with a lot on the line. BCS title game appearance in 2012 and the college football playoff appearance for the first time in 2018. Both those games were, against what were pretty average USC teams. And the outcomes ended up being closer, I think, than most people probably would have expected. So Marcus Freeman has coached out there before. He has played out there before, and he talked a little bit about what makes it so tough out there.
Well, I remember as a player there, played there in 2008, and it was rocking, man. It was celebrities and the crowd, and it was big time, like the lights, man. It was the lights, and they beat us up pretty well, and I think back to 2 years ago, and I think we're on a 5-game win streak. We had won 5 in a row, and we had a lot of hopes. We win this game, what bowl game we were going to, and, they obviously crushed those hopes. They were good. They had playmakers. They had a great team, but, they beat us. And, you guys hear me talk about keep the pain. That's one that sticks with me for a long time, and it's one I'm going to make sure the guys in this program understand, because I don't care if you were here or not, right? There's certain expectations when you're in a relationship, right? And we're all in a relationship together. So the pain that I felt as the head coach leaving there in 2022, they're all going to understand no matter if you were here or not. And so it's a challenge.
I mean, Pete Carroll was still there, I believe, in what he was talking about in 2009, or that was Carroll's last season at USC. So I don't know how much that had to do with anything. I don't know. Like, how much do you think it is? Like, it's just the fact that this is a very long, very bitter rivalry, Notre Dame USC, even though they're separated by, several hundred miles, it is still a very intense rivalry, how much do you think that plays into it? Especially, like USC it's like, hey, our biggest rival, or one of our two biggest rivals, they beat UCLA last week. Notre Dame has got a chance to go on to the playoff. Like, how much do you think the like just that basic aspect plays into the fact that USC has played Notre Dame pretty tough the last few times they've been out there, with something on the line, especially?
Sure. I mean, I talked about it earlier, and that's why I said it's really fitting that USC, Notre Dame, this game kind of holds the key to Notre Dame making it into the first 12-team playoff, right? Like, this is kind of like that script writing that everybody talks about. Like, this is why you love watching college football. But historically, Notre Dame has never really played out in the Coliseum great. You know what I mean? I mean, it was, what, 2012, the final score was 22-13, and they won on like that goal line stand. Now, like, mind you, USC would have had to score the touchdown and get the 2-point conversion just to tie. I think that's how it panned out. And then in 2018, it was 24-17, and then that catch by, I think it was Tony Jones, who scored on that like little screen pass, kind of sealed the game for Notre Dame. But and then in 2020, they didn't play out in the Coliseum because of COVID.
Right.
And then 2022, they lost. And
Marcus won by a touchdown in 2018. Yeah, and I mean, they've also been, basically pummeled a few times out there.
Yeah,
2016 and 2014. Yeah.
Yeah. Those were bad years.
Yes.
Yes,
they were. And it just, like I said, I just feel like the rivalry, there's still a ton of talent. And typically, kind of like this year, when USC is not as good, it's not necessarily because they don't have talent. They just, like, are they not coached well? Whatever it happens to be. Anthony said, to be very exact, 2,097 miles. I did say several hundred,
Yeah.
2,097 still qualifies as several hundred.
That is several
right?
hundred. It's 20 of them. So yeah, I mean,
That's
you weren't wrong. So, but yeah, I mean, here's the thing: USC is a weird team, and us here at Irish Breakdown, we're going to talk about this all week, right? But outside of Thanksgiving, but they're an interesting team. They're 6-5, and every game that they've lost, they've had a lead in the fourth quarter. They're 4-1 at home. So they played pretty well in front of, and yes, I understand that, the Coliseum isn't what it used to be, and they aren't selling out crowds like they used to back in the day, and I understand that. But when a team plays well at home, they play well at home, and you can't deny when a team is 4-1 at home, and that one loss is a 3-point overtime loss to Penn State, right? So this game is going to be interesting. This is a much better team than what people give it credit for. So this is going to be a fun one on Saturday. I mean, I hope it's not too fun to where it's like I'm on the edge of my seat all night, but
Yeah. I mean, I think to me, the bottom line is Notre Dame can't just show up thinking all they have to do is show up and they're going to win that game by any means, because whatever USC's best game is, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And Notre Dame, of course, you mentioned the fact that USC has played all these close games, but Notre Dame has not played in close games. They have pretty much dominated everyone with the exception of Louisville since that Northern Illinois. Well, and maybe not Miami. They didn't necessarily dominate, but still they have ended up winning by sizable margins against everyone with the exception of Louisville. But that is not the case for USC, because they have played in a lot of close games, including that Penn State, another college football playoff team that we're talking about. So here's Freeman on that.
Not at all. Our guys will understand the challenge that we have ahead of us. You don't have to play in close games to feel the pressure of performing on this play. And that's why we coach the way we coach. Like, there has to be pressure to execute on this play. And that's what close games are won, by executing on that play when it matters the most. And so we try to create that type of mindset in practice and in a game. No matter what the score is, no matter who's in there, you have to get your job done on that play.
All right, Trevor. So what kind of factor do you think all this could be?
I think you kind of have to look at it on both sides of the coin, right? I mean, USC has all this experience in those close games, but they're not winning them, And then on the flip side of the coin, you have Notre Dame, who I understand what Marcus Freeman is saying of, that one play, one life mentality. And even though it's not a close game, we have to convert on 3rd and 3, for the sake of execution. But I mean, let's be real here for a second. There is an added pressure when we have to convert this 3rd and 3 to win the game, not to just keep the drive alive and then win by 38 instead of 31. You know what I mean? So I think there is going to be a little bit of added pressure, but on the flip side, I think it would be different if USC was winning these close games and they're just not.
Right.
Right.
Their 5 losses are all 1-possession games, an average of 3.8 points per game. So they have been like agonizingly close in terms of, from their perspective. They've also in their last 2 games, wins over Nebraska and UCLA by a combined total of 14 points. And the common denominator with most of their schedule, with the exception of Penn State, is these aren't very good teams. Again, and you flip it, and while these teams that Notre Dame have beaten are not head and shoulders better than anything that USC has been playing, Notre Dame has been dominating those teams. Their games have been by a margin of 30 points a game or something like that at this point. And this is the key to me, Salty. Thank you for bringing this up, because this is kind of where I was going to lead this to. This is the biggest thing. He says, defense travels, offense not so much. That's why the Irish kick butt at home or away, while USC is good at home and bad on the road. And that's USC has not played against an elite defense. They're going to see an elite defense on Saturday, and they've got a very young, talented, but very young and inexperienced quarterback who they're going to have starting in this game. And I just feel like what Al Golden can throw, 2 years ago, when Marcus Freeman and Al Golden and company in Freeman's first season went out there, they were facing the guy who was about to win the Heisman Trophy, Caleb Williams. And Al Golden, his defense in that season, as we all saw, is nowhere near a complete, nowhere close to what it is right now. It was still, they were still getting a lot of things figured out. That was year one in the system for everybody. And even the best players, were having their issues here and there. It's a completely different kind of defense 2 years later. And I think that's going to be the biggest difference in this game. You don't have a Heisman Trophy winner. You have a quarterback who's only played in a handful of games, and Al Golden's going to give this guy all kinds of looks. And while USC's defense is better and they'll put up more resistance than the defense that we saw last year at Notre Dame Stadium, for example, I feel like that by the time this is all said and done, it's going to be it might not look perfect from quarter one, even into early in quarter 3, but by the time we're midway through quarter 4, I think it's going to be a pretty comfortable game for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, this has the opportunity, like a lot of the opponents that Notre Dame has played. You know what I mean? I feel like this game could play out very similar to how the Georgia Tech game went. You know what I mean? It can be kind of close. Offense might struggle to start, but then, they pull away and it ends up being like an 18-point victory type of deal. Jaden Mavi is an interesting player because he started, I think, all games again, when he was with UNLV last year.
Right.
So he transferred in. So, yes, he does have some experience, but again, it's not the same type of defense. And the closest thing that they played to a Notre Dame defense last year was Michigan in week 2, and they lost 35-7, and he didn't even start. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be very interested to see what the defense does. But look, if you guys like college football like I do, and you just have an appreciation for the game, this Lincoln Riley versus Al Golden matchup, volume 3, call it, it's going to be a lot of fun, right? It's, the first year it was 2022 in the Coliseum, and USC had over 400 something total yards of offense and put up 38 points, and Notre Dame didn't force a single turnover. And then last year in South Bend, they held them to 20 points, forced 5 turnovers, held them under 200 yards rushing and passing. So, it's kind of like that. It's kind of putting the ribbon on the trilogy, and it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup goes. But I'm with you. This is a different USC offense, and they had the returning Heisman winner in Caleb Williams last year, and Notre Dame.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the biggest difference, in my opinion, was in 22 they had Jordan Addison, a Biletnikoff winner, and in 23 they didn't. They had true freshman Zachariah Branch. So,
well, I mean, look, he had literally the worst game of his career against Notre Dame. Caleb Williams did last year, and I mean, you make a great point, because there's not nearly as much, there's still talent, but there's not nearly as much skill talent as we've even been used to seeing. And that's kind of the head scratcher to me for where Lincoln Riley is. Like, if you compare where he is in year 3 to where Marcus Freeman is in year 3, the recruiting thing is still a pretty big issue for them out there. And I think that's what's going to ultimately separate these two.
Yeah, I mean, the only position that I did a recruiting breakdown of them, and I went through and I looked, and the only position they're able to recruit well still is wide receiver. I mean, their wide receivers are, as far as like star ranking, they have a 4-star, a 5-star, a 4-star, a 4-star, a 5-star, and a 4-star that all play for them, like, very consistently. But the thing is that I think why they're not getting enough attention this year is because they have like 6 receivers that all have over 300 receiving yards. They just don't have like that guy, right? That's kind of separating himself above all other. It's very similar to, like, if Notre Dame passed as much as USC did, it would kind of look very similar. You look at the box score after Notre Dame games and you see that they've hit like 11 different receivers. That's kind of what USC does. Just take away how many times Notre Dame rushes the football, and that's just what USC does. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, they're ending games with 4 different receivers with 4 to 5 receptions. So they spread the ball around a lot.
Yeah. And this, like what Michael's saying, 2 years ago, because of the DB injuries, Notre Dame played the 3-3 front, and, USC just ran all over Notre Dame. And that was kind of part of the point. I probably didn't, get there all the way, connected all the way to the end, but that was, Golden had to play this gimmick, whether you say it's because of DB injuries, or again, just the fact that he was not nearly as confident in that defense as he has every reason to be confident in the defense the defense that he's going to take out there this weekend. I mean, look at it. It's been hit by a lot of injuries as well, but look at the way they're playing and the confidence that he has in that. He's not going to, he doesn't need to, again, you don't have Caleb Williams and, some of the other guys that Jordan Addison and, the whole crew that he had, out there that year. My point is, Al Golden doesn't have to throw gimmicks at USC this weekend. He's going to go with his defense, and he's just going to throw crazy looks at, how do you say his name? I still, I had it written out phonetically, and I still can't remember how to say it. Mavea? Is it that it?
It's either Mavea or Mavi. I think it might be Mavea.
Yeah, one of those. But we know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Their quarterback. USC's
I keep second guessing every time I start to say it. Yeah.
A lot of vowels.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
A lot of vowels.
So Jeremiah Love's 68-yard touchdown run on the first play of the second quarter against Army was his last play of that game. And of course, Riley Leonard was out quickly as well. And Freeman was asked if he did that, got the starters out early with an eye toward USC this weekend.
Not that I wasn't thinking about USC or anything like that during the game, but like the score was at a point where we felt like, Army's offense isn't a tempo offense. It's going to take time for them to score points. So I thought it was at a point where we could win the game. And they're a physical football team. Like, that's probably the most physical football game we played all season. So part of that came into my mind, said, hey, all right, we're at a point we believe we've won this game. Let's take Riley out. Let's take Jeremiah Love out and get some guys some meaningful reps, but also protect those guys because, I mean, it was a physical game. And so all those things played into the decision to take him out.
So he basically didn't want to disrespect Army and say, hey, we were thinking about USC early in the third quarter. But, I mean, that's essentially what he was saying. It's like it was a physical game. Okay, I get that, the pounding and all that. You know, what? There's no sense leaving those guys in any longer than what he did. I think the game was in control, and the way Army obviously, you know, runs offensively, there was no way they were going to be able to catch up to Notre Dame.
No, I mean, I understand why some people think that it was looking towards the USC game, but if there's one thing that we have learned about Marcus Freeman is he is very much an in-the-moment coach. I think it is more of they were that score put them up by 28 points.
Right.
And with how dominant Notre Dame had been all game, their backups could have came in and scored, which they did twice. You know what I mean? So I think it was more of a let's not ruin what the meaning of this game is by trying to hang 70 points on Army.
Yeah.
You know, because
they just come out looking bad and
yeah. I mean, because there was a lot of I've seen it on Twitter, and like I said, I was at the game, so I heard a lot of chatter going around. Look, why not give the ball to Jeremiah Love 20 times? It's like because he doesn't have to rush for 350 yards in a game. Like there's just, I mean, he
that's the thing. If they wanted to, and he only had 7 carries and he had 130 yards. If they wanted to, the guy could have had 300 yards in that game Saturday if they wanted to just keep feeding Jeremiah Love.
Right. And at some point, like when you're a coach, no matter who the opponent is next to it, like you know, Notre Dame could have ended their season like even if it wasn't against USC, you know, and like they were playing the Citadel at home, like some teams down south do. Then, you know, then I think they still would have taken him out because there's just no point to have, you know, your RB1 taking an additional 10 to 12 unnecessary hits.
Absolutely. And, you know, look, Aeneas Williams got in, and look at what he was able to do after he got in, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's just good for everybody. You know, like you said, they put the reserves in. The reserves were able to still move the ball and score. And in the meantime, you know, there wasn't much more resistant, you know, on the other side coming from Army. So there was absolutely no reason to keep him in, you know, regardless of, and I didn't mean that as a negative, you know, when I was, you know, like saying that about, but at the same time, it's like I do think there is a little of both, you know, it's about game control, knowing the situation of the game when you need to get those guys in there. But you do still, if it's as physical as he was talking about, you know, there is no reason to risk anyone taking any unnecessary shots in a game like that, you know? So.
No, not at all.
All right. So this week's schedule is always unique because, of course, it is Thanksgiving week and you're also traveling. They're leaving on Friday. The game kicks off at an earlier time than we're used to seeing when Notre Dame goes out to the West Coast, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern time. So how did that impact the schedule this week?
It did a little bit in terms of later in the week, what time we're leaving, what time bed check is, and then what time we're waking them up had to do with the 3:30 game or the 12:30 out there. But the schedule for the week has been created months ago in terms of knowing that Wednesday we don't have school, so we got to maximize the opportunities that we have on that day to, you know, get the most out of it. And then Thursday being Thanksgiving, you know, we have to work. We have to work and be prepared, but we also want to be able to give players and some coaches and staff the ability to have Thanksgiving. So we'll practice in the morning and we have Thanksgiving meal together. And then in the afternoon and evening, the players have a chance to get away, and as do the coaches.
Yeah, they used to, what they would do for a long time is the team would get together, you know, over at the Goog or wherever, Thursday afternoon. They would, you know, have their Thanksgiving feast. They would all chow and, you know, eat their 800 turkeys and stuffing and whatever else. And then they would go like straight from there to the plane and they would fly out to California Thursday night. Last year, Freeman switched it up, so now they're traveling on Friday, which is a regular travel day for a road game. Even though the trip is a little bit longer, it's about a 4-hour or so flight going out. Obviously, just experience, so it's about 4 hours going out. Like the whole thing. But so they're going to leave on Friday instead. I mean, it's again, it's Thanksgiving week, so the schedule is going to be a little bit different. I don't know. What do you think, Trevor?
I like that they're keeping the travel day consistent, honestly, like, because you said that normal away games is Friday's the travel day, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need as much routine as possible. Again, we're talking about 18 to 22-year-old kids who are very regimented, who are very built around a schedule and a routine. So,
yeah.
I think for Freeman and his staff, it was just about finding a groove that worked for the rest of the team, right? And finding a way to, with it being a holiday week, making it not as different. It just, again, it adds to another distraction of like what else is going on, so trying to keep as much normalcy as possible. I like it.
Yeah. And I mean, because again, like he was saying, it's already an odd week anyway, because everyone, like class lets out today. Once your class is done on Tuesday, you're going home for Thanksgiving. So everyone's leaving campus, with the exception of the different teams that are still here playing or practicing and whatever else. And then, again, it's like Thursday is Thanksgiving. So you got to get your work in before you have your big feast and all that kind of stuff. So it's already different. So I agree. I like the fact that they're trying to keep at least some consistency by leaving on the same day. You're not hanging out in the hotel, extra long and all that stuff, because that's a thing too, or, like needing to go out for your walkthrough or whatever at the stadium. Sly Fox wants to know, by the way, if you got in the stadium, how did that work for the media? Was the media gate okay? Like getting into the stadium? Sly Fox says him and about, you probably heard about the 20,000 or so other people who had issues getting inside.
Well, so I found out about it on Twitter because my wife and my sister were waiting outside, and the only text that I got from them was, "This is crazy." And I thought they were just talking about like being at the stadium and being at the game. I was like, "You're right. This is crazy. This is awesome. We love this." And then they just didn't text me back. And then I got another text that said, "We finally made it in." And
like,
it was
no,
like,
you idiot. This is just madness out here.
Well, and they were like, "We finally made it in." And I looked and I was like, it was like 5 minutes before kickoff. And I was looking around and I was like, the stadium is like half full. I was like, it's a little cold and windy, but it's like New York. Don't people just like, it's November. This is just what the temperature is. And, and I was like, all right, well, maybe it just won't be that big of a game. And then I was scrolling through Twitter before kickoff, and there was just videos of thousands of people still outside. And I found out after the game, it's because they just only had 2 gates open.
Wow.
Don't know why.
That's insane.
Don't know. Yeah. I don't really know.
You had a sellout crowd and they had 2 gates open.
Yep. So
probably didn't want to pay Yankees didn't want to pay the extra, employees, to work the extra gates would be my guess. I don't know.
Now, I don't know if there was a big confusion because some people's tickets said that you had to go to a gate that ended up being closed. I don't know, because Lauren and Kayla's ticket had like the correct gate number on it. But even so, regardless, whether you messed up and you only ended up having 2 gates open and sent people to the wrong gate, or only chose to have 2 gates open for 50,000 plus people, I mean, what are we doing? Yeah. Exactly. There was Kayla and Lauren both told me that there were people that didn't even get in until after halftime. And then once they saw the score, they just got up and left.
Wow.
Yeah, no.
That's awful. Because those tickets weren't cheap either. So
nope.
Facilitate said he missed when the team is getting out to LA. It's going to be Friday. I don't know exactly what time, but they're leaving Friday sometime. So they'll be getting out there sometime Friday. All right. One final thought before we move along to rapid fire here in a few minutes. There's a schedule change next week coming because Notre Dame's coaches, of course, used to stay out on the West Coast after either the USC or Stanford game, obviously, depending on which year it was. They would stay out there to recruit. Well, the NCAA has changed the recruiting calendar, and so Next week is now a dead period, which means that they can't stay out in California recruiting because you can't contact players, obviously. So what's that mean for Freeman and his staff?
It did a little bit in terms of later in the week, what time we're leaving.
That's the wrong soundbite. I'm sorry. I didn't load up the while we were sitting there yakking about Yankee Stadium. I didn't put the next one in. Here we go.
Give coaches a chance to, one, we'll get back and evaluate the game and look at ways to improve. Give coaches a chance to have some meetings with their players, right? Just some, we don't get enough intentional time to meet with our players, so it gives us a chance to meet with our players and give our players a chance to really study and get into school. And, there's still physical work that we'll do next week, but obviously you don't know what you're planning for yet at that moment.
Yep. So almost sounds like he doesn't know what to do with himself since they're not able to get out there and recruit now. But I mean, like the priority, it does kind of seem to me, Trevor, like, they've been doing this for about 25 years now, where it's either USC or Stanford ending the season out there. And the reason was always, you end the season out in California so that the coaches could do that, so they could stay out there and continue recruiting. But it kind of seems like that priority has gone away now, hasn't it? Like if this is a dead period and there's no need for it because you can't actually go out there and recruit anymore.
Yeah, I have no idea what that's going to look like. I mean, maybe now with the 12-team playoff, that just turns into an additional week of practice or walkthroughs because, I mean, they still have to play the conference championship game for those in a conference, and then Selection Sunday will be the following Sunday. But for Notre Dame, especially if they beat USC on Saturday, I think that has to just turn into an extra week of practice because, I mean, a win against USC just ultimately seals the deal for you. You know what I mean? And then it's just a question of where do you fall? You're going to be playing at home. You're going to be playing away.
Yeah.
But I think it just turns into another week of preparation. But it's going to have to be kind of like macro view preparation because you don't know who you're going to play. So it's not like you can start watching film on anybody unless you just want to start watching all the film of all teams who might possibly be in the playoffs. Just be well-rounded. But no, I think it'll turn into a week of preparation. Honestly, I think it'll be another week too, especially if there's a year where Notre Dame isn't going to make the playoffs. It'll be a week where they sit down and talk with players who are like kind of on the bubble of staying or leaving, or I think it could be some of that too, but I don't know what they'll do. Sounds like Marcus Freeman doesn't know either.
I agree, DK. I don't know what the guy who was asking that question, I don't know what he was thinking. That guy must have been a meathead. You're looking at him. With that, Trevor, are you ready for rapid fire?
Sure I am.
That last question takes us into this question. Since the week after the season is the regular season is now a recruiting dead period, that first week of December, coaches can't stay in California to recruit, as we were saying. So that means the Irish don't necessarily need to end the season in California anymore, as they've done since 1999 when they finished at either USC or Stanford. So I did ask Marcus Freeman about the possibility, like what it would mean to maybe have a future home game Thanksgiving weekend instead of traveling.
I haven't thought about that. I really haven't. I have not thought about having a home game the last game of the year. If I have a strong conviction at some point that that's what's best for our program, I'll have that conversation with Pete. Right now, that's just not something on the top of my mind that I'm worried about. I think the way the season's scheduled, it's scheduled. An opportunity to go play USC at USC for a rivalry game it's exciting. That's what we're looking forward to.
No, it is exciting, but again, if the rationale behind always finishing the season on the West Coast for these last 25 years is with the idea that your coaches can stay out there on the West Coast and just spread, fan out and go recruit, if that's gone now because that's a dead period, again, I don't expect to, like it's going to necessarily change next year, but these contracts with both Stanford and USC are still pending, like for going forward, for example. And, Irish English, I do agree with what you're saying. Like he did, basically shut both of them down. He didn't seem that anxious, to talk about either of them. I can't say as I blame him because, I do get it. He's got to focus on the game, and that's kind of what he was referring to. They've got a game this weekend. But wouldn't it be exciting going forward if you just flip this thing, maybe the Stanford series, home and away, assuming they're going to keep Stanford, maybe that goes back to just being an October series, regardless of the location, and the USC series goes to the end of the season, and it's always Thanksgiving weekend. One year it's in Los Angeles, the next year it's in South Bend. You just make Notre Dame USC a Thanksgiving, weekend rivalry edition. So you get a home game every other year in Thanksgiving instead of traveling to the West Coast every year. What do you think, Trevor?
I mean, that'd be nice. I highly doubt that USC would agree to those terms, considering they would have to play in the cold. I mean, I went to the game last year.
Well, they are in the Big Ten now. Like, to me, that, kind of changes things, right?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I don't think that it's a mystery that their final 2 Big Ten games, one of them was at UCLA and the other one was at home against Nebraska. You know what I mean? So I think they're going to try to be very careful of how they schedule their games, just because I just don't think that they want to go and play in the cold. I mean, even back when last year they came in October and played, and I mean, it's funny watching the different players warm up. I'll put it that way. Notre Dame's running around out there in cutoffs, and the USC players are out there in the ski masks to keep them warm, and long sleeves, and everybody's walking around in parkas. So, I mean, I love that idea. I think it'd be great just because it kind of adds to rivalry weekend, because it only seems like Notre Dame can partake in it.
I think
every other year.
Look, it's not like, like Washington and Oregon are cool this time of year as well. And like they were just in Seattle a few weeks ago, so I will be curious to see, how accommodating the Big Ten is, like, are they always going to work around you? It's like, if you're taking the million, the bucket loads of money that USC and UCLA are taking to be part of the Big Ten, like, playing Big Ten teams in November in some cold weather is part of the deal as well. I get why, it's literally been since 1959 that USC made a trip to South Bend in November. It's been a long time, and there's a reason they obviously did away with it. Like as for the Stanford thing from 88 to I think 98, they, it used to be only in October. They played all those games in October against Stanford, whether it was here or in Palo Alto. And then it was in 99 where they started this alternating deal. And, and even I would say, even if you are not able to come to that kind of accommodation with USC, if you're Notre Dame, I do think that it is at least worth, like if you're Notre Dame and these trips to the West Coast are going to continue, like this, if this recruiting dead period is going to continue going forward, which I believe that it probably will because of the college football playoff and everything, and like they're trying to take some things off the plates of these coaches, because you do still have early signing day coming up. You're going to have coaching carousels. You're going to have teams in the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. So they were trying to, pull some things back that the coaches didn't have to be, responsible for and spreading themselves around in December. So if that's going to continue going forward, like if you're Notre Dame, wouldn't you want to, even if it's, every other year, whether it's USC or somebody else, wouldn't you want to potentially try to have some home games Thanksgiving weekend so you don't have to worry about traveling Thanksgiving weekend? Like Boston College, the infamous 1993 Boston College game, that was the last game of the regular season. That was at Notre Dame Stadium in late November, that same weekend, before all of this, like you grew up pretty much, with this knowing that you're either going to go to USC or Stanford every year. So, but it wasn't always like that. So it seems like there are some new possibilities for Notre Dame going forward as a result of the way this calendar has changed.
I think it'd be great. I think with the expanded playoff as well, too. I mean, I think it'd be nice to every other year Notre Dame ends their season at home in South Bend. But I I'm going to be interested to see who it would be. You know what I mean? I want it to be somebody of, I'm trying to think of the best way to put that, like somebody of substance, like a good rivalry game. Like I love rivalry.
You want a good TV matchup.
Yeah, like I like rivalry weekend in college football. It's fun. You know, I mean, it's a lot more exciting when you say who's playing this week. Oh, you got, you know, Alabama, Auburn, you got Ohio State, Michigan, you got Notre Dame, USC. It carries significantly less weight when you're like, we got Notre Dame, Stanford. Like, it's cool, I guess. If it was 2012, it'd be awesome. But
and that's why I think, you know, like that would be perfect just to keep in October if you're going to keep Stanford on the schedule, and then you just flip flop it, you know, who's hosting it every other year. But the ACC has been more than willing to send Southern schools to South Bend in November. You know, like Florida State's played here in early November, twice in the last 5 or 6 years or something like that. You know, they played here early November a few years back. Clemson has played here as well. So, I mean, send Miami, put Miami there Thanksgiving weekend, put Florida State there Thanksgiving weekend, or Clemson. Like, there's a lot of different options if the ACC is willing to be part of that as well. I just think it would be cool, you know, for everybody, for Notre Dame to actually be home Thanksgiving weekend. I know a lot of people say, well, the students are gone. Well, it's Thanksgiving around the whole country, and other teams are other teams are having home games Thanksgiving weekend, and their students show up for those games. So
I think students in Columbus don't really care that it's Thanksgiving on Saturday.
That's right.
I'm gonna be honest.
When it's Notre Dame, Michigan, they will show up.
Mm-hmm.
They do show up. That's right. Columbus and Ann Arbor and wherever it happens to be. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So let's put the top college football playoff contenders into tiers here, Trevor. You can make your tiers as big as you want. There can be one team in a tier. There can be 2 or 3 or 5 or however many. I actually took mine down. I've got 5 total tiers. In mind. So what would your tiers look like? What is your first tier? What would be the teams in your first tier?
Tier 1 teams for me are going to be Oregon, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Yeah, some people aren't going to like it, but Notre Dame is one of the hottest teams in college football right now. And I don't know very many teams from a matchup standpoint that would want to go head-to-head with Notre Dame. Home, away, neutral. They're hot right now. Oregon I put in there because they're undefeated and have yet to lose. I mean, they've won ugly, but at the end of the day, when you don't lose, going undefeated is really hard. And I think some people take that for granted sometimes, like, oh, well, they're just going to go undefeated. And it's like, oh, yes, because that happens all the time. Going undefeated is hard. Right. So, and then Ohio State right now, I think that they're one of the most battle tested teams that's up at the top. You know, they played Penn State, who's in the top 5. They played Oregon, who was in the top 5. They played IU, who was in the top 5. Now, I know we can kind of get into the conversation of, well, are Penn State and IU really 2 of the top 5 best teams in college football? It's like, I mean, no, but at the end of the day, when you play 3 top 5 opponents, like that's worth noting, right? Tier 2.
I just, for the record, before you go on, I might just have to start calling you Vince Jr. because I didn't realize like how overboard, you know, you are with the, you know, like I get it. You know, I think Notre Dame is a good team as well. Tier 1 up there with Oregon and Ohio State. I don't know if I'm quite on board with that.
Okay.
But it's your tier. That's fine. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I mean,
I've got Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas in my tier 1.
Okay. Texas was a weird team for me because
I flirted with, do I put Texas in tier 2? And I've got Notre Dame and Penn State on tier 2. I do think that Notre Dame is better than Penn State. You know, I like them in a head-to-head and the whole thing. I feel like Texas, just the consistency that they have had throughout most of the season moves them, you know, a little bit above both Notre Dame and Penn State for me. But I've got Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, tier 1, Notre Dame, Penn State is my tier 2.
The reason why I put Notre Dame in tier 1 is because I think they're closer to Ohio State and Oregon than they are to Penn State. And then I guess you could make the argument that I could just have Notre Dame solely in tier 2. Like, I like Texas. I just don't know what kind of football team that they are. You know what I mean? They're consistent. They also don't have a ranked win. You know, like it's weird. You know, right now their marquee wins are over Vanderbilt and Arkansas. I mean, I guess now you can probably throw Florida in that mix because Florida's upsetting people and Texas is the only team in the SEC that's handled them.
Right.
But I don't know. Texas has one ranked win. They played at home and they lost by 15 points. So Texas is a weird team for me.
I mean, at the time, and that's the thing, as far as the playoff committee is concerned, ranked wins are teams that are ranked right now. But Texas has actually beaten 3 teams that were ranked at the time of the wins: Michigan, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt. So again, like right now, no, none of those teams are ranked. Just like Notre Dame, like Notre Dame can claim 4 ranked wins, but only 2 of those teams are obviously still ranked right now. So I get what you're saying. I do. I really love the skill, talent, and the speed that Texas has. Like my eyeball test tells me that Texas is a better team, and I like Texas. Again, like when I look at pure skill talent, I like Texas a lot better than I like Penn State, for example.
Oh, absolutely. No, I do too. I mean, that's why I put Notre Dame in my tier 1. Like people can call it a homer take. That's fine. But I watch college football every single Saturday, and there's not a lot of teams right now that are playing at the level that Notre Dame is. I mean, that's just, and Penn State is not one of them. I mean, I'm very bullish about that. And I don't care that they just played Minnesota at Minnesota. Don't try to tell me how tough it is to play at a 5 and 6 Big Ten teams stadium. Notre Dame is not beating Minnesota by 1 point. So that's why I just can't put Penn State and Notre Dame in the same tier.
That's fair. I got you.
Penn State for me, like I to finish my tiers for like national championship contenders, I was going to put Texas and Georgia in my tier 2.
Okay.
And then my tier 3 was probably going to be Penn State, IU, I guess Tennessee, if you want to throw them in there, Boise State, SMU. That's probably just spur of the moment. If I had to think, that's probably what I would have as my tiers.
Okay. My tier 3 is Georgia and Tennessee. I've got them there. And then my tier 4 is I've got a lot in tier 4, actually. Miami, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, and Clemson. And I know obviously some of those teams have 1 loss. Clemson obviously has 2 losses. I think that those teams are all relatively equal. And again, I think the biggest thing most of us are looking for, like from a Notre Dame perspective, 1, we're looking at, is Notre Dame going to be ranked ahead of Penn State this week? And we'll talk about that here in just a second. 2, what is the committee going to do with Indiana? 3, what are they going to do with teams like Georgia and Tennessee, who, even though they have 1 more loss than Indiana, like, are they going to be ahead of them, like the AP poll had, for example? And then 4, what are they going to do with those 3-loss SEC teams? I think that that's going to be really interesting. And my tier 5 is Alabama, Ole Miss, Arizona State, South Carolina.
Okay. I like that. I like that you put Arizona State in there. I respect that. No, that's good.
They're one of the hottest teams in the country right now. I think they deserve to be in there.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. I mean, it's just, I like this question. This is a lot of fun. It's just so tough to put teams into tiers because college football is so wide open right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was talking to a buddy about this earlier today. We talked about it yesterday too, I do firmly believe that, Ohio State, Notre Dame are 2 of the hottest teams in college football right now. Also, if you told me that both of those teams lose in week 1 or round 1 of the playoffs, I don't know if I'd be surprised just because of how crazy college football is right now. If you would have told me that Alabama was going to lose 24-3 to Oklahoma last Saturday, I would have laughed in your face. And here we are. This is just a crazy season of college football, which again is just why it's so hard to put teams into tiers. So
here's like the Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State discussion, and I'm not, again, I do think that Notre Dame is a better team than Penn State, but we've talked before, like, I do think that because of Penn State's defense, I think the game would have some similarities just to the way Texas A&M, like the Texas A&M game played out, for example. Like the Texas game, like Texas would hit some explosive plays against Notre Dame. Like what I would really like to see that we didn't get to see, and I think a lot of people feel, I'm not holding this against Notre Dame. I'm just saying, like for me to consider Notre Dame like in that tier 1, like you're talking about with Oregon and Ohio State, like I do think that, Notre Dame and Ohio State, like there's not a big gap, there's just a little gap really that separates them. But I would like to have seen Notre Dame go up again, like that offense, Notre Dame's offense go up against another quality defense to give me a real good point of comparison to see how I really feel like it's going to stack up. Because I think the defense is going to stack up and play against anybody. But there are going to be questions about just how many, points that Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to score against some of the better teams they're going to face once they do get into the playoff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's totally fair. That's, again, you kind of start getting into the argument of, well, Notre Dame's playing a lot of inferior opponents, but they're doing what they should to inferior opponents, which again, just all feeds into why it baffles my mind that Penn State is ranked so high as they are, because they are also playing inferior opponents and winning by 1. So, the Texas argument is an interesting one, because a lot of the things defending, and not saying that this is what you said, but a lot of the things that defend Texas is literally just the eye test. I watch that team and I just believe that they're going to be able to be better than Notre Dame.
I mean, it's completely fair to say, well, Texas lost to the only good team that they played. But, like if we're going to be completely fair, well, Notre Dame lost to the worst team that they played.
Sure. I mean, it comes down to the lens of how you look at things. I'm somebody that
maybe not the worst team, but you know what I'm saying.
Like worst.
Because as soon as I said that, I went, well, Florida State, like NIU might give Florida State a game.
I know what you mean. I mean, it's one of those that it just kind of depends on how you evaluate. You know what I mean? It comes down to, it comes down to if people value losses or if they value wins, right? Because if we're talking about losses, then like I understand why people are upset why Notre Dame is probably going to be the 5th ranked team in the country.
I mean, losses are part of the evaluation, but at the same time, it's part of the evaluation. It's
100%.
Not the only, and that's Notre Dame's biggest detractors, which tend to be, more like, I don't even know, is it media based or is it even fan base? Like everyone, keeps beating this whole NIU thing, but they are disregarding the fact that Notre Dame is scoring more points and giving up fewer points than like anyone else in the country over this stretch.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Sean. I mean, look, Notre Dame has the number 6 scoring offense in the country, and that includes their 14-point performance against Northern Illinois. Right? Yes, I would have understood if the NIU thing was as at the forefront of the conversation as it is right now, if the playoff rankings came out after the Louisville game. It's like, are we just going to forget that this team 3 weeks ago lost to Northern Illinois? Like, I get that. This happened on September 7th. And since then, Notre Dame has rattled 9 consecutive wins. None of them were close. The only one that was close on the scoreboard was Louisville, and Notre Dame had the lead in that game for 52 minutes. So, there's things to pick apart, but I agree with you 100%. The loss column is a part of the evaluation. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, people will only look at it if the loss is like really bad. Nobody's even talking about, well, not nobody, but I don't even think the Oklahoma loss is weighing as much as it is on Alabama, even though Oklahoma this year is not good. They're just, well, it's Oklahoma.
Well, and that's it. Like everyone's willing to forgive Oklahoma, even though it just happened last week. And the fact that they got smacked around, and Oklahoma is, as you said, they are not good this year. They were a good defensive team, but they are not a good offensive team. And, it's already like, well, 3 losses. Are they going to get in or not? Come on, 3-loss SEC team. TD4ND says Notre Dame's offense practices against the best defense every week. To an extent, at this point in the season, it's more scout team. You're not going good on good, that much at this point in the season. So
yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't think their practices. I mean, if they are, great, because it's showing. But I don't know if they're lining up for 60 minutes, going best on best every day in practice.
Yeah.
That's probably
more
like
a training camp thing.
That and more like individual drill type, not full live sessions. Yeah,
right. Yeah, like you might have, like in the early periods where you're still doing one-on-one, like receivers against DBs and that kind of stuff. Matt says, I'm not a Notre Dame believer. I believe in Notre Dame. I'm just not a Kool-Aid drinker. I'm not like full-fledged drinking that Kool-Aid. I take emotion as much out of the equation as possible, and I try to base it all on as much, facts and evidence as possible. It is a really good team, but we've also been burned before. And, so like history is part of the deal as well, and again, like I would just like to have seen him play one more good defense and like see how that would have played out against another quality defense. But we didn't get to see that other than Texas A&M really, and a little bit of Louisville, but
yeah.
Joe says, join the cult. All right, here we go. So, scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence Notre Dame will be the number 4 seed in this week's playoff rankings?
2. I mean, it's not that they don't deserve it, but there is just I don't know if somebody in the Penn State program has dirt on somebody in the committee, or if they just look. We've talked about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot. There is no argument that you can make to me why Penn State deserves to be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. Yeah, I don't hear one. And outside of, one loss to Ohio State and one loss to Northern Illinois. If that's the full basis and you're only looking at it in a vacuum at that, then sure, put Penn State at number 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like then in your mind, the top 4 should be Oregon, Ohio State, IU, Penn State. If the only thing that you're evaluating is Penn State's loss to Ohio State versus Notre Dame's, sure. But there's a lot more factors that go into it. If they are going to truly say, well, eye test and margin of victory and quality wins, if they truly evaluated that, Penn State would not be ranked ahead of Notre Dame.
Yeah, see, somebody, and my answer is probably a 3.5. And like yesterday, I think I talked myself into thinking that it was going to happen just because, Notre Dame keeps ascending. Army was as Vince said on the show yesterday, Army is a team that this committee had ranked number 19, and Notre Dame just beat the snot out of them this last week. So how much does that matter? Like, how much does it matter to the committee that Notre Dame beat a team the committee had ranked number 19, and Penn State struggled against a very average to below average Minnesota team? Like how much does that matter? And yesterday, I think I had myself talked into it more, but the more I look at it, it's just like, I don't know. So I think that, do I think that Notre Dame deserves to be ahead of Penn State based on, like when you look at, like every data point that you can look at, again, like points scored and this and that, like the whole thing. Yeah, I believe Notre Dame deserves to be ahead of Penn State, but I'm just not convinced that the committee's going to see it that way.
No, I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like, it's just nothing that the committee has shown to this point deserves Penn State to be that high. And look, and the only thing that people can come up with are hypothetical arguments. Like, what if Penn State had Notre Dame's schedule? Wouldn't they do the same? I mean, maybe, right? What if Notre Dame had Penn State's schedule at home?
Penn State's Penn State's strength of schedule is only where just like Indiana moved from, what was it, like around 100 up to 50 because they played Ohio State. That's the only that's got to be the only reason Penn State's strength of schedule is as strong as it is, because I looked at it last week and like the combined record of their opponents was something like 15 games under 500 for the season. So like, with the exception of Ohio State, Penn State hasn't exactly gone out of its way and played anybody that great as well. Ohio State is totally propping up Penn State. All they did was lose a close home game to Ohio State and that has kept them where they are. Otherwise, they haven't beaten anybody other than Illinois. That's and Illinois isn't even that good right now. Again, go ahead.
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. Like, yes, they played Ohio State close. They also didn't score an offensive touchdown. And their only touchdown on the game came on a very early pick six. Now, again, I'm not knocking Penn State's defense. Penn State, I'm not saying that Penn State sucks. I'm not saying that, since they're number 4 and I think that they're overrated and overseeded, they should be 20th. No, I don't think that either. It's just they shouldn't be 4th.
Right.
Because there's not a solidified argument. And look, I've seen it going on in the chat. If you think that them beating Minnesota because a middle tier Big Ten away stadium is tough, that's why they should be 4th. I'm not buying it, man. I'm not. Look, other conferences came in and played these middle tier, tough, hard-nosed Big Ten teams in their stadiums and whooped them. Alabama just lost to Oklahoma. Not a good team. They also played Wisconsin at Wisconsin and won by 30. But for some reason, because Penn State went in there and won by 15, that's just this grueling, on the road. I'm not somebody that buys into it just means more because it's the Big Ten and it's harder because it's the Big Ten. I look at matchups. I evaluate it from a football standpoint, not names of the school. I don't. Yeah. I can't build my argument as to why Penn State is ranked ahead of Notre Dame because if Penn State played Notre Dame's schedule, then they might have the same record. And I don't buy into that. Do I think that Penn State?
Why isn't Minnesota better than what they are right now with NIL and transfer portal and everything else and all this hoopla, row the boat and all that mess, PJ Fleck. I mean, he's been there for 8 years now. Why aren't they better than what they are?
Yeah. No, it's weird. It's definitely weird.
I realize, Minnesota's not the playoff conversation, but like you talk about that being a tough, not being a tough place to play. It's not, but it should be. Everything about Minnesota should be better now in year 8 under PJ Fleck.
Yeah.
But it's not like for Indiana in year 1 under Kurt Cignetti to have the kind of year that they're having. There's no reason Minnesota couldn't have had a year like that.
Sure.
Like any time in the last 8 years.
Sure.
So Irish defensive coordinator Al Golden was asked at his media session yesterday if he needed to amp his guys up to play USC. And here is the response.
And that needs to be said, if you're watching Godfather 2 and Hyman Roth's talking to Michael Corleone, what's on in the background, right? It's Notre Dame, USC, and that's all we got to say. I mean, that's it at the end of the day. All right, so it's a great opportunity for us, and we're blessed to be a part of it, and our job is to honor that.
So I've got to ask you, first of all, Trevor, because you are a young pup. Have you seen Godfather 2?
I have. It has been a while since I have seen it, but I have seen The Godfather 2.
Me too. I've seen the Godfather movies. I'm not as into the Godfather. Probably it feels like if you're an East Coast guy, you're really into the Godfather, especially if you're Italian or Sicilian or whatever. I've seen them. I'm not as into it. That's not a reference that I would have made. But does hearing Al Golden just spit that out off the top of his head? Does it impact how you think of Al Golden?
It's nice to know that he does things outside of scheme up awesome defenses. You know what I mean? It's nice to know that he watches some movies in his free time. He's also from the East Coast, so it makes sense why he loves that movie.
Yep.
I unfortunately watched The Godfather like too young, I guess, because I now have an appreciation for better dialogue in movies and really great plots. And when I watched
Which is why you're Quentin Tarantino and Glorious Bastards fit. By the way, in Glorious Bastards, I think we talked about it the last time you were on, or maybe the first whenever. It's been on one of the pay channels this month. So I have seen it multiple times since we talked last. So it's been very exciting.
It's fate. It's fate. Love it. I love it, man. But yeah, I mean, it's good reference. But outside of that, I watched it too young. I watched it at an age where I just wanted to see fighting for 2 hours, just nonstop action for 2 hours. So maybe I'll have to rewatch The Godfather this weekend. But no, I love the reference though. It was awesome.
Yeah, I liked it as well. But honestly, if I'm going to make a reference to a movie with Notre Dame USC on in the background, I'm going Die Hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you seen Die Hard?
Mm-hmm.
the guy who's down in the lobby, who is, like the security guy or whatever, there's a TV on in the background and he's watching Notre Dame USC. Now, not realistic considering Die Hard is, set at Christmas time, and Notre Dame and USC, even when the game is in Los Angeles, don't play at Christmas time, but still it's on in the background. So that would be my Notre Dame USC reference, would be Die Hard over Godfather 2. So I definitely would have remembered Die Hard. Like I said, I've seen Godfather 2. I didn't remember that, but I do like that, like Al Golden has obviously seen it enough times that, he knows that that's part of the backdrop in Godfather 2. So I like the reference there.
Yeah, I like it too.
And by the way, he was nominated for the Broyles Award today, which goes to the top assistant coach in college football. No surprise. I would be shocked if he doesn't win this thing with the defense that he's got. But that being said, considering like it seems to like Notre Dame coaches like never seem to win these things for whatever, as good as they are. But like Al Golden's defense, I think it's highway robber if he doesn't end up winning this thing this year.
Well, I agree. And while we're on the topic of awards and highway robbery, I think it's criminal the fact that Xavier Watts isn't even a finalist for the Jim Thorpe. It's crazy.
Who's not a finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award?
Xavier Watts.
Really?
No. Nope.
Salty, did you post something about this? I honestly did not see what you're talking about. If you did post it, and it is Notre Dame USC. It's not Notre Dame Miami. I guarantee you it's Notre Dame USC.
There you go.
I would bet another, Vince trip around his house streaking that it's Notre Dame USC. But honestly, Salty, I didn't see it if you referenced that in there. Go ahead, Trevor.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, like, Xavier Watts is one of the best safeties in the country that just doesn't get any sort of recognition, which is crazy considering he won the Nagurski Award last year. But no, they put in Malachi Starks from Georgia, Caleb Downs from Ohio State, and some kid from Texas. And I have no idea what their stats look like off the top of my head, but the fact that Xavier Watts, the interceptions that he had last season, he's got some interceptions this year. He doesn't have nearly as many as he had last year. These awards tend to be heavily stat-based. It's like, what can you do to back up the nomination when you send it in to these awards? Yeah,
and it tends to go heavily on what kind of stats. I don't know how much actual game film, these guys actually watch when they're, going through these evaluations and handing out these awards.
Well, I think that's the frustrating thing is Caleb Downs is a finalist. He doesn't have a single interception on the season. Like these awards are just kind of slowly turning into just who you play for. Like, it's no mystery to me that the three finalists for the Jim Thorpe Award is, a safety from Ohio State, a safety from Texas, and a safety from Georgia.
Yeah. So these guys are saying that he has better stats than all of them. Okay. Well, then I have no idea, why.
It's a crazy thing. I tweeted about it earlier today, and his stats are insane.
Honestly, I didn't even see that it had come out today because I was doing other stuff. So
Xavier Watts has allowed a 26.0 passer rating, 0 touchdowns allowed, 4 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, and has an 89.2 coverage grade and was not a finalist.
And there you go. And as Joe PM says, more interceptions than all of them. I don't know what to tell you. The guy obviously won the freaking Nagurski Award last year.
Like I said, it's just about it's about what team you play for. It's not about, unfortunately. It is what it is.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Irish special teams coordinator Marty Biaggi says punter James Rendell will get at least one more year of eligibility at Notre Dame, possibly even more.
It's awesome if they stop making him rugby punt.
Yes.
It'll be awesome if they just let him kick like a normal punter, because when he has done it, he sends them. But no, that's awesome. I can't tell you the last time I watched. When's the last time Notre Dame had a punter in back-to-back years? Was it Jay Bramlett?
Man, it might have been. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's, the way they've done this thing. They've either gone to the transfer portal for kickers and punters, or in this case, all the way to Australia to get him. It's funny because I was talking yesterday about the Kansas punter who his mom came all the way from Australia, to come to his game last week. And then they played Colorado and Kansas never punted against Colorado.
Yeah.
But that happened to James Rendell. Apparently his mom came, but she was smart. She came to the Virginia game. So she got to see him punt a couple of times. And then she also went to Yankee Stadium, even though he didn't get the punt at Yankee Stadium this past weekend. So she stayed out here for a week. And I mean, if you're going to come all the way from Australia, you should stay at least a week and go to 2 games, right? Not just one. But I mean, I do think it's big because of what you're talking about, the consistency, 1, and 2, just having more time to work with this guy through the spring. And, because, they got the summer and stuff like that to work with him, but just to have him here, more familiarization, just let him be his natural self. I think that's the big thing. Like you said, like why they keep asking him to do this rugby punting is beyond me, because when they just let him unleash that hammer, like he lets it fly. And we got to see that, like
I watched him going against Virginia, punting into the wind, have like 58 yards of air time. Like, I mean, it went 58 yards in the air into the wind. Just stop with the rugby punting thing. I don't understand it. I don't get why. Like I whatever. But yeah, no, it's cool. It's awesome. I mean, I'm a big believer that continuity in any position is huge. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's media's fault. It's media's fault. We overhyped him. Well, we got to see him punt that first day of training camp, and we saw what that leg looked like. What we didn't see on that first day of training camp, or really, any of the rest of training camp, was all this rugby punt stuff. And, like this, like trying to get directional and, like all these different things. It just feels like they've made it overcomplicated for him.
Yeah.
Okay. It is what they did. And if they just let him punt, I think that it would look a lot more like what it looked like against Virginia. Andrew says he disagrees. Rugby punts work. Look at Indiana. The kid booted it, but Downs had boom. Well, maybe that kid is, like maybe he likes punting rugby style. I'm not saying rugby punts don't work, but obviously rugby punts are not James Rendell's forte.
Yeah, my beef with rugby punting, Mr. Gilmore, is not of the concept of it. It's who can do it. Right? I mean, if James Rendell is not good at rugby punting, which we have evidence of, then here's a crazy idea. Don't do it. I mean, I'm no Division I coach, but that seems pretty logical to me. So to clarify, I don't dislike rugby punting for its concept. I just don't like it when it's, not working with that specific punter.
I just don't like it specifically with James Rendell, because he has shown that he is not as good at it as when he just gets back there and punts like a normal punter. That's why we hyped this guy up so much. If you want to blame us for throwing the hype on this guy, we saw the massive leg and the precision that he had when he was punting in camp, but it took us a long time to see any of that, because it just felt like they were making a punter think. And why do you need to make a punter think? Let him focus on catching the snap and then putting foot to ball and booting it as far as he can with as much accuracy as he can, because he sure seemed really good at that when we did get to see him in camp. So
sure. And he's been good at it when he does it in games.
Right.
So
right.
But at the end of the day, to answer your question, I think it's exciting because it just adds continuity. And I'm a big believer that continuity in any position is good.
Do you buy or sell this week's Clemson-South Carolina game as a play-in game for an at-large playoff berth?
I'll buy it for Clemson.
I'm in the same boat. I think South Carolina still needs a lot more help. Like they need some more chaos kind of going on in front of them. Clemson has become a bit of Trent, like, even though they played, was it Wofford that they played last week, or who was it?
I think so.
Played? Yeah, someone along those lines. But like the fact that Texas A&M lost, and it's almost like they've kind of fallen upwards here the last couple of weeks. Just by the fact that it's like they got a couple nice quality wins. I agree. Like, I think it is for Clemson. I think if Clemson wins this game, they're in really good shape because of the fact that you've got these 3-loss SEC teams. But South Carolina is still a 3-loss SEC team, and their resume is not better than either Alabama or Ole Miss. And they're not a better football team than Alabama or Ole Miss. So they're not getting in over one of those two teams.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's working against South Carolina right now is just the SEC is a very deep conference. And with them being, I'll have to look. Actually, I can pull it up right now because Clemson only has 1 loss in conference, whereas South Carolina has 3.
Right.
So, and Clemson is done playing ACC opponents. Like, this is their last regular season game. They're going against South Carolina, who's in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is much more of a play-in game for Clemson, and they just kind of have to hope that they, some other chaos happens between, who would it be? SMU and Miami, I suppose. But I think that it's more of a play-in game for Clemson.
I would concur with that. I'm looking back because Salty is very adamant about his Die Hard. Okay, here he goes. Also in Die Hard, when the guy at the security desk is trying to turn away the cop, Notre Dame versus Miami is on in the background. It's not Notre Dame Miami. It is Notre Dame USC. You have to trust me on that. Go find it. I mean, it's practically Christmas season. Die Hard's got to be coming on here pretty soon, right? I'll bet you a Yingling, Salty. How about that? Tony Kornheiser says Kalen DeBoer should be on the hot seat after losing to Oklahoma. Do you buy or sell that?
Sell. For the same reason that Marcus Freeman shouldn't have been on the hot seat in his first year head coaching at Notre Dame when they lost to Marshall. It's way too early. It's way too early. I don't think any coach should be on the hot, barring them doing something like illegal, right? I don't think that they should do anything to, like, I don't think any coach should be put on the hot seat after not even finishing his first full season. It's unrealistic to think that a guy is going to come in and replace what Nick Saban did, right? Like, that's an impossible job, right? So I think that, no, I'm selling that.
I sell it as well. I get that it's their first 3-loss season in like 14 years or whatever it is, but I don't think it's quite to that extreme yet. Now, maybe because it is their first 3-loss season in 14 years, like the people down there in Tuscaloosa and, wherever else down there in Alabama might feel differently. Lose to Auburn this week, and you could change my mind on that very quickly. Like if you're 4 losses and you finish the season with the loss to Auburn. But look, I've said all along that, Alabama of the last, going back to 2017. So basically it should have just been called Nick Saban's Alabama, because, if you look at the coaches who came, like the Shulas and the Prices and, all these people who came before Nick Saban and were just very average down there at Alabama, like Nick Saban turned Alabama into the power that it was when he was there. So, and just look at the fact that with the exact same quarterback, Nick Saban got to the college football playoff with all that, craziness they had going on at quarterback, starting 3 different guys early in the season, including Tyler Buckner and everything that went on. And they still ended up in the playoff. And now, like some of those people are gone, but it's a different head coach. It's a different world down there, but I don't think that he deserves to be on the hot seat right now.
No, I just think it's way too early. And plus it's just, I don't know, man. I'm just a big believer in giving a coach time. I am. And the coach that you're asking him to replace is the best coach of this generation. Arguably the greatest college football coach of all time. Right. So, I mean, Yeah, is potentially 9-3 a large fall off from being a playoff contender in a 4-team playoff? I mean, sure, but if the expectation was Kalen DeBoer is going to come in and pick up right where Nick Saban left off, like that's just delusional. You know, I'd give him at least another year because I think that's fair to give a coach enough time to build a program.
And there's big differences in the personality and the coaching style of these two guys as well. And I do think that there is, because Saban was so micromanager and hard nosed and hands on and everything else. Kalen DeBoer is just a different guy. So no, I don't think you should be judging him, based on year one when you are following a legend. But that's part of what comes with following a legend is where you're as well. You're not going to be judged nearly as fairly. You'd rather someone else had got the job and then got fired and you come in 2 or 3 years later. So Andrew wants to know if North Carolina gives Al Golden a call. Nice job, he says. Golden would solve their defensive issues. I agree with all that. I mean, I think you'd be stupid if you're North Carolina not to call Al Golden. I think Al Golden is going to get a lot of calls. I think it's just going to come down to, with Marcus Freeman's staff, they have had a lot of success. And the more success you have, he kind of talked about it with those NFL comments last week. The more success you have, the more interest that you're going to have. It's going to come down to, does Al Golden want to be a head coach again or not? That's ultimately going to be it. Does he want to be a head coach again or not? Because if he wants to be a head coach again, specifically in college, he can go be a head coach. But he does seem pretty happy here at Notre Dame with everything. And as we were talking, you and I were talking before the show started, he did just sign a 4-year extension this offseason as well. And he's got a kid who's going to Notre Dame and the whole thing. So, if he wants to be a head coach, he will. But it's going to come down to that, just personal preference. What exactly Al Golden wants to do for the rest of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I think you could have also made the argument too that he probably got some calls in the offseason this past year after what he did for the Notre Dame defense in 2023, which probably led to the contract extension in February of this year. So, but no, you're 100% right. I mean, he is somebody that if he wants to go be a head coach in 2025, he can. 100%.
Yeah. You look at Clark Lee, Marcus Freeman, and even before that, Mike Elko, they were all at much different parts of their career, specifically Lee and Freeman, because of their age in comparison to Elko, who's a little bit older, but he's younger than even Al Golden. But Golden's been around the block. He's been a head coach at a few different places. Does he want that again? It's ultimately going to come down to that. And he's had a heck of a lot of success being a coordinator here at Notre Dame, and he seems to like that. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, there's just some coaches that are just better focusing on one side of the ball too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sometimes that's just a coach's forte.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that this is him, but I think someone just said it, but it is true. Some guys are meant to be coordinators and run their side of the ball, but not necessarily head coaches, and again, I'm not saying that that's him, but, again, he's got enough experience at Temple in Miami. He knows what it takes, what goes into being a head coach and everything that comes with that. And, Miami is a high profile place as well. So he's coached at a high profile stop, so it's going to be really interesting. I would never say never. Unlike some people, I'll never say never, but he just feels like he really likes working at Notre Dame and everything that comes with being the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame.
Agreed. I agree.
Chris with a super chat earlier, he says, if Vince has to watch Gladiator, I have to watch Wicked. Find out what's wrong in Oz. Just in, Sean, the wizard will see you. Now, Vince volunteered that he was going to see Gladiator. I never made him see Gladiator. I have zero desire to see Wicked. Like, I remember growing up, Wizard of Oz, it was like once a year, the Wizard of Oz would come on. It was like an annual thing, back in the 3-channel days and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, we're up to see the wizard and whatever. I have no desire. Vince said he wants to see Gladiator 2. I already went to see Gladiator 2. We'll bring you our non-spoiler conversation at some point next week if he actually goes.
There you go.
Yes, Corey, I completely agree. Big difference between Gladiator.
I was about that was going to be my comment. I was like, I feel like that's a different kind of.
What does one have to do with the other?
Yeah. I was going to say it's okay. All right.
Trevor, NFL teams. There was a report on this recently. Interesting report. NFL teams eat between 3,600 and 4,300 Uncrustables per week. How many Uncrustables have you eaten in your lifetime is my question for you.
In my life? Gosh.
So this is going to be a pretty good number. You're in on the Uncrustables based on your initial response is what you're telling me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you come from the right age bracket. So
yeah, no,
you probably grew up on these things, right?
Yeah. My parents never really bought them. Like, we just went old school and just made a peanut butter and jelly,
Right.
But college, yeah, I mean, it was the perfect thing to just kind of grab out of your fridge and just walk to on your way to class. And I mean, truth be told, it was like the easiest thing to buy for on like spring break. You know what I mean? Like, just throw 2 full boxes of them in a fridge. And I mean, Uncrustables are delicious. So
what kind of jelly? Do they give you jelly options? Like, do they have grape Uncrustables?
Yeah, they have grape, strawberry. Now they have Nutella ones. They have honey ones. They're good. They're really good. My wife swears up and down that they used to make grilled cheese Uncrustables, and I've never seen them. Can somebody in the chat throw in to see if they've ever seen it too? Because I've been dying on this hill that was never a thing, and she swears up and down that it was a thing. And the only thing that she has shown me as proof was a very grainy Google Images picture that looked like somebody made it on their laptop at home. So,
or maybe they experimented with it and then discontinued it.
Maybe. But
yeah, I guess we should explain to people because Jacoy Johnson Cole says, "Oh, what? First, are you strawberry or grape, Trevor? Which one are you?"
I'm grape.
Okay.
I'm grape.
I'm grape jelly as well. Like, I'm a grape jelly guy. Like, don't eat a whole lot of PB&Js, but like we just grew up making PB&Js. I don't know when Uncrustables came about. So for people who don't know what Uncrustables are, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they take 2 pieces of bread and they basically wrap it around and they kind of, like pinch down the corners and cut off the crust. So it's like instead of like a Hot Pocket, it's a PB&J, peanut butter and jelly in your 2 little pieces of bread that don't have any crust on it. Hence Uncrustables. But apparently NFL teams just mow through these things in the locker room during the week.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. I mean,
get a little energy, get a little calories in you,
Okay. We have it confirmed by Joe.
Oh, so the grilled cheese did exist, but they were discontinued. Okay. Yeah, facilitate, and it's round. It's like a little round, kind of like the size of the palm of your hand, basically. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I don't know that I have ever had. I might have tried one, like when the kids were younger, but it just didn't. Like, to me, it just didn't appeal to me that much.
Sometimes,
like the bleached white bread and the whole thing.
Fair enough. Sometimes if you froze them and you ate it at the right time, like the peanut butter was still a little like crunchy. And
I've heard like if you toasted it, like toaster oven, like then that that can kick it up a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's good. I like Uncrustables. I have to go to the store tomorrow and get stuff for Thanksgiving. I think I might buy some Uncrustables. I'm not gonna lie.
Some Uncrustables for dessert for Thanksgiving.
Hey, listen, we're hosting this year, so I got the green light from the in-laws and from my mom that we can serve whatever we want to. So Uncrustables might have to make its way onto the menu.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right. Well, that's going to do it. We're going to wrap it up. Trevor, appreciate you jumping in here today. I don't know what the rest of the week has in store. Obviously, Thursday, Thanksgiving, there won't be a show. I know you and Vince are doing a show tomorrow, right?
Yep. So Vince and I are doing Buy, Sell, Hold tomorrow.
Okay.
So that will be kicking off at 1 p.m. like normal. So make sure you guys have that notification bell on to know when we go live. And then obviously Thursday is going to be Thanksgiving. And then Friday, I will be back live with Brian, and we're going to do Keys to Victory and I believe a mailbag.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. The Nutella one actually does sound good.
It is,
Stephen. Like,
yeah,
I'm a big Nutella fan. Vince can't stand Nutella, but
yeah.
I would not mind trying the Nutella personally. Yeah. So I'm traveling tomorrow down to the islands, and then have games on Friday and Saturday. Notre Dame women play Utah Friday at 5:00. By the way, I said yesterday, turns out Cayman Islands are on Eastern time. We were originally told that it was Central time, but they are on Eastern time. So 5:00 tip off Friday against Utah, 5:00 tip off Saturday against TCU. I guess that'll be around halftime of the football game. So maybe you tune in a little bit for the basketball game. I don't even know if it's on TV or if it's streaming or what. I do know it's on radio though. So here in town, you can find it on 96.1 FM. And of course, anywhere around the country, you can go to the Odyssey app, AUDACY. The Odyssey app is where you can find all Notre Dame broadcasts, football, men's and women's basketball, and hockey. So that's it for me for the rest of the week. Have a great Thanksgiving. If you're traveling, of course, be safe. Enjoy your friends and family. Go Cowboys on Thursday. I don't know. We'll just say go Cowboys on Thursday. Go Irish this weekend. Have a great Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you next week. But Trevor and Vince and everybody else will talk to you for the rest of the week as well. Have a good one. Ivy Nation Sports Talk.